Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Teresa Chavez. I'm the Producing Artistic Director of About Productions. And welcome to our final symposia of the First Responder Tales series. It's the fourth of 4, and we've been working on this for a year, and I'm really, really proud of all the work we've done, but I'm especially proud of this particular session because of the nature of it and because it is intergenerational and it is part of our history of coalition building. The whole series really has been part of About Productions' history of coalition building. It's just one more step in that. And we've put these together to gather our colleagues in the field who we have named cultural first responders. And we started out the sessions a year ago really kind of looking at that name and that identity and how that feels to everyone. There was a whole conversation about that. The very first one was with also John Malpete and his crew from the LA Poverty Department. They kicked us off and we had a wonderful evening. The second one was about strategizing, learning from each other about how we strategize for survival. And we looked at different models for that. The third one was about telling your story through advocacy, looking at arts advocacy models, and the wonderful Arts for LA people came in and gave us some tips and kind of a advocacy 101 kind of thing. And here we are for our final one with an amazing group. I'm so proud and really touched. Everyone that we asked immediately said, I'll be there. I want to be part of this. I want to share my story. I want to connect with my community outside of my own community, which is really what the series has been about. For those of you who are new to our process here and what we've been up to, I'm just going to read the definition that we've been using as a guide. And when I say we, there's been a wonderful committee of people, all of whom are here right now. And then there are a few people who aren't here. Our facilitator, Allison de la Cruz, who has been here from the beginning. Rose Portillo, our esteemed associate director. Ramona Gonzalez, who is also our blogger as well. And if you haven't been to our First Responder Tales I always forget if it's .com or .org, that's terrible. I think it's .com actually. There's a blog on there, and Ramona's been posting these wonderful blogs after each one, but also in between and giving us questions to consider about the field and about LA and about how we make our work and about how we are connected or not connected or disconnected. Not only, from our within our worlds, but amongst each other, because we all are doing this community-based work in our own communities, and because we are small, we tend to be small, we have no time to connect with each other and to learn from each other. And so that has been part of this process as well. But our definition, cultural first responders are experimenters, inventors, and trendsetters who often blur the lines between art, education, and activism. They provide essential services and vital programs that sustain their particular community and contribute to its welfare. First responders provide safe spaces for the creation of human connections through the exploration and representation of the stories, histories, and frontline issues that are deemed important by the community itself. And importantly, they have chosen to work at the scale that allows them to have this collaborative and meaningful engagement. And I would like to add that our artists, our theater artists that have been part of this series, have chosen to create a studio that is synonymous with their community. And that is something that I think is unique to the work, and people have been deeply committed to that. And in so doing, they've created an inspiring legacy that they're passing down to the next generation of cultural first responders, and that's part of what today's symposia is about. We've asked our elders and their chosen emerging artists to talk about one seminal work and/or project and represent that in any way they feel is useful for our audience. And then they're going to ask each other one compelling question. Make sure it's compelling. And each set of elder/emerging artists, each pair, each duet is going to have about 20 minutes, and then we're going to switch to our next one. We're going to take a break and have 2 more pairs and take another break, and then we're going to get into small groups and discuss our responses to the conversations today and other questions that our esteemed facilitator is going to offer to us. So with that, I'd like to introduce our first elder. Many of you know him and have seen his work. If you've been here in LA, I'm sure you haven't missed it. But for those of you who are new to us and to this process, Lynn Manning is an award-winning poet, playwright, actor, and former world champion of blind judo. I bet you didn't know that. And 3 of his recently acclaimed plays are showcased in a collection just published last year called Private Battles and Other Plays. And that was published by No Passport Press. You all have, if you didn't get one as you walked in, the bios of everyone on the symposia are there. So we don't want to spend a lot of time with these intros. So one other thing I do want to say about Lynn is that in 1996, in partnership with the late actor-activist Quentin Drew, he co-founded the nonprofit company Watts Village Theater Company to develop and produce new works of relevance to the underserved Afro-Latino communities of Watts and South LA. The company also provides theater arts education to the youth of the community. And that was 20, I think, was it?
19 years ago this year.
Okay, so almost 20 years ago. So the 20-year commitment to Watts. And with that, we're going to go on to our performance here.
You lead the way, Allison. Boy, that starts out low. Time trumps, wide-eyed and slack-jawed towards electric midnight. Having peeped the fraud of New Age mysticism, I come full circle and dance among purple pyramids to the chamber music of suburban bathroom chemists. I am parasailing the synapses on an electrochemical cruise through tall cotton. I am out there. The phone rings. Its cord is a pulsing axon to the real world. Its receiver, a volatile neurotransmitter, a plastic explosive awaiting my touch. I gingerly remove it from its cradle. The earpiece shatters, flooding my apartment with the sounds and scents of my mother's drunken poverty. Her terror looms huge and horrible just beyond the grasp of my rational mind. I have to reel in the ectoplasmic filaments extending from my fingertips, command Miles Davis to cease stirring his foul-smelling bitch's brew, and allow this 6-foot-thick carpet time to retract to its original height. I say, okay, moms, I turned the music down. What was that you said? You shot the motherfucker. What motherfucker? My apartment expands and contracts in rhythm with the controlled heaving of my chest. The walls become my exoskeleton, provide me the volume to contain the images flooding from this shattered earpiece. Somewhere in South Central Los Angeles, just a loogie's phlegmatic flight from Skid Row, my mother stands, a smoking gun in one hand and my throbbing ear in the other. Her old man lies tossed and twisted on their filthy floor, dying from bullet wounds and being far too loud about it. He's oozing rare, ancient, alcohol-saturated indigenous American blood into their worm-rotted floorboards, and I think, can't the septuagenarian motherfuckers stop bitching long enough to die quietly? I didn't make all that noise when I got shot. When I lay oozing precious African-American, Irish, Mexican blood into the beer-stained carpet of that Vine Street bar, my sight sucked down the black hole of a .32 automatic. Mom says, "Damn it, bastard, shut the fuck up. I'm trying to get your ass some help." I say, "Did you call an ambulance, Mom? Did you call the police?" She says, "I tried to, but I couldn't get through. Everyone's busy. That's why I called you. Maybe you can get through up there in Hollywood. Get them to send somebody down here before this old bastard dies on me." The colors of my apartment shift towards red, hot awareness of LA's socioeconomic inequities. Those who most need help can't get it when they want it. Yes, the South Central Saturday night shootout is well underway, and many more will be dying from newly torn buttonholes before the dawn shines its spotlight on the carnage. I light a cigarette and inhale the entire contents of my room. Sweat pours from my pores as rationality takes residence. I say, "Okay, Moms, I'll call emergency as soon as I get off the phone. Just leave the gun out in the open and stay away from it. If nobody shows up in 10 minutes, you give me a call back. If they do show up, call me from the jailhouse when you can." The Hollywood emergency operator asks questions that test my tenuous cool. Questions like, "Who are you and what's your involvement? And why didn't she call herself? And why didn't she call from down there?" Through rapidly growing teeth and hair, I hip him to the ramifications of tax-based police protection, checkbook, emergency service, bid him long life in Primrose Lane, and hang up. The rescue now in motion, I return to slow motion. I remove a slit stalactite from my cavernous fridge, start that bitch's brood of boiling once again, climb back up into the bell of Miles's horn, and am myself blown away. Thank you. I'll contextualize that a little later, but right now I want to pass the microphone to my partner on this thing, my emerging artist hero, Donald Jolly.
Thank you, Lynn. Hello. Now that everybody's awake, that was just amazing. I have the unenviable honor to follow Lynn Manning, but I'll try my best. So I'm Donald, and I'm a playwright, and I live in LA. And I found this idea of first responder tales very interesting, particularly because the play I'm going to talk about is a historical piece. So I'm not the first to respond to this subject, but it's whatever. So this is my play Bonded, which premiered at the LATC in 2011, as you may see on the slide. And Bonded is a historical drama set in 1820 Virginia about 4 slaves and what happens when 2 of the male slaves fall in love with each other. You know, just a little light Saturday night story. For me, this story, Bonded, comes from my need to feel a sense of belonging and a search for historical affirmation, as I called. You know, I, as a African American gay person, just want to contextualize myself. Where do I fit in this world? Where do I fit? And so I'm obsessed with history. A lot of what I write about has to do with history. And I just sat back and sort of let these voices come to me, because if you do any general, casual research, you're not going to find a lot of voices from that period as it relates to queer identities. You're just not going to find it. And when you're reading African American slave narratives, there's this very specific reason why you see repeating motifs, such as how I became a good Christian, or how I was a great family person, because these people were fighting to prove their sort of dignity, their humanity, in the context of a society that was very, very rigid about, this is what a human does, this is what good people do. Flash forward 200 years later, I'm writing this play, and for me, I see an absolute parallel. I am trying to find my place in this world and within those rules. Now, fortunately for me, so much has changed that I'm able to talk about these things, that are somewhat taboo. Some of the pictures, it was a really great production, some really nice guys. Although when I told people about this play, a lot of times they'd say, oh, well, don't we already know everything about slavery? Why this again, And I had to be very specific and say, look, okay, Roots has already been done. I'm not doing Roots. Okay, I'm telling you a story that I've never seen before on stage, on the screen. Very important to me. So I had to lure them in with very handsome-looking actors. But really, for me, I was also really adamant about not erasing the queerness from this play. I wrote it first as a thesis play at USC, working on my MFA, and I talked to some local artist who shall remain nameless, who said, this is a great play if it wasn't so much for all that gay stuff, And I've been in a position where they're like, where do I market this to? Do I market to the African American theater companies? Do I go to gay theater companies? Because no one really wants to talk about slavery and homosexuality. For me, here are people who are going against the law by proclaiming their love, and the law won't even, sanction their union, let alone their humanity. So this is what I'm attempting to do with this play. For me, this is a part of my belief that theater is worth most when it's used to seek an ongoing connection with communities that surround it. The best theater to me is that which exists in a symbiotic relationship with the world at large, where both the theater and the world feeding and nourishing each other. And in order to keep it from being only for the so-called culturally elite, it is also crucial for theater to reflect the diversity of society. So I believe in theater that embraces multicultural, multi-ethnic, and multifaceted audiences. A theater that truly embraces diversity by allowing people of all lifestyles, all hues, all creeds, and all incomes to be who we really are, in our own aesthetic, on our own terms, and not merely imitations of someone else's idea of the norm. Furthermore, I'm seeking to historicize the queer the historic, and to remember those who have been forgotten and lost in the margins of history. So that's what I'm doing with Bonded, and in relation to Lynn, also, we've been working on a play called Riot Rebellion about the 1965 Watts Uprising. And I'm not from Watts, but again, I'm fascinated with history. This play is based off of interviews of people who actually lived in Watts and the surrounding area during that time. So again, I'm trying to look at this history, but not just repeat it because I'm not a historian, but to look at it through a lens that makes it very accessible to all of us and relatable. African American man being pulled over by the police, profiled by the police brutality, Yeah, that happened in 1965 in Watts, so got to work on that play. But I don't know if any of you have been watching the news lately, but it's very, very relevant today. So that's my other aim as it relates to historical plays. The interest is not just in the history in and of itself, history as it relates to how we're living our lives today, what we can learn from it, and where we can imagine to go next.
Okay.
We can improvise. Should I ask you first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so Lynn, my question for you is, actually your piece was just quite moving, right? And very personal stuff. You're talking about a real incident with your mother. But why did you choose theater? Why do you use theater to tell these stories and sort of promote the advocacy that you're interested in as it relates to the community?
Well, the tail end of what you said about your motivation and your work would if I could, kind of mimeograph that and post it, I'd just shoot it right back to you. But it's theater for me is I think the shared nature of theater makes it unique in it. Well, just the delivery of it is unique. The participation of the audience, the willingness of the audience to take part in this live event, to suspend disbelief and get on the bandwagon with you for this journey of exploration is something that I find compelling and something it's like no, I'm going the wrong direction on that. Yeah, but I think theater just has a unique way of bringing the truth of a circumstance or a situation or humanity to people, and I think it's so unlike television and film, and that the just the live nature of it. I think that's about all I can say about it. I just know that live theater for me, the way it moved, the way it struck me when I guess the first play that really moved me was Streamers, and it deals with with the issues of Vietnam and race and homosexuality, and how these issues it can explode, and I found I was totally moved by it because I was in an environment at the time where I lived in a group home with that was mixed race, multicultural, and there was issues of sexuality and for these adolescent males, and it reflected a reality that I'd never seen before. And anywhere, and right there in my face, right there in front of everybody, and I wanted to be able to affect people the same way that work affected me, and so that led to to the kind of work I do, bringing issues of import to myself and what I thought were issues and that of import to the community. And so we established Watts Village Theater Company to try to maintain an opportunity for producing work of relevance that spoke to the issues of the community, and involved the people in the community in the work. So that's kind of like how we come to Watts, to Riot Rebellion and the other works that we've done that address either historic moments in the community but that all reflect right up to the contemporary issues that we deal with today. They all speak to on multiple levels that way. I'd like to ask you, and I was sitting here saying he's answering my question in advance. But I wanted to ask you. I have an issue that being a black man and a blind man, a black man with a disability, I find myself in two cultural categories, and I consider it three actually. But yeah, and I know that you are find yourself in at least two cultural categories in the same way. And I want to ask you the question as to how do you reconcile the two in the work that you do? Because I know that as you pointed out, sometimes what's one culture will claim you and another one won't, or vice versa. And so how do you reconcile being of these multiple cultural categories when you do your work or when you address community?
Thank you. For me, now I understand that, let's say if we're just talking about sexuality, that the gay rights movement, gay identity is not exactly the same as African Americans. I know all of these different things for women's rights or the rights of the disabled. We're all different, right? Those are all different things, and there's sometimes we claim the language of the other, but we're not all that different. And they're not all that different. And for me, my experience is, okay, I experienced life as a gay black man. Of course they make sense to me. Of course they're paralleled. Of course I'm gonna write about them both. Now, speaking like that can get me in a lot of trouble because there are those who say, well, you've got your rights, you've got this, we all have these multiple levels of privileges, and I'm well aware of that. But sometimes when you try to put these all together, you look at that stew, it makes people really uneasy. For me, that's just life. And when I first started writing, I was really upset about it. I went to historically white university, and they didn't know how to react that I was writing these plays about these gay black guys, or I've got these people of different races doing all this, because we're supposed to understand that a black play is supposed to be about black people overcoming oppression from white people, and that's... I don't need to keep writing the same plays that have been written for the past century, For me, I'm writing about my experience, and when I talk about us telling our stories on our own terms, whatever that identity label you choose for that day, I think we should allow people to have that space, because we're all multifaceted, and we're not just black or gay or woman or blind or Christian or Hindu or anything like that. We're all of these things, and I think what we really need to challenge ourselves to do is accept that sort of diversity and look at the complexity of it all coming together without trying to continue to exclude people. Because there are a lot of people, a lot of voices that are excluded, and I know I'm in a very privileged position to be able to talk about my struggles as a black gay man. But just being able to say that puts me in a position where I'm like, okay, well, where are the more stories of queer women of color? Where are the more stories from our blind storytellers or people with other different abilities and whatnot? And I think, particularly theater artists, I realize that the things that I write about, I'm not writing for the sake of commercial success. Right now, I'm trying to tell something that matters to me, and by that assumption, I assume that it matters to somebody else. And if I can just affect one person anywhere, I'm writing this play for Watts, and I grew up in Washington, D.C. in the 80s and 90s, where it was the murder capital of the U.S., I use that sort of experience and put that in this Watts play, but if I can affect some kid in Watts or in any community who feels left out, who feels silenced, then I'm doing my job. And so I don't care if I'm making the waters too muddy. We need things that are be muddy for us to sort of chew on. And it's not all black and white. It never was just black and white, but literally or figuratively. And it's time to go beyond that. So.
Great. So we want to say thank you so much to our first duet.
Thank you.
So, look.
When it comes. Thank you so much, Sam. So I just want to give us a chance to kind of absorb all of that. Today feels like 4 different moments to take a breath and to take the wisdom and to think about what questions that we might have in each pair. So I just want to honor what we just heard with Lynn and Donald and just invite us to breathe that in. So go ahead and just take a breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And as you think about what's lingering for you, what's resonating for you, what are questions that you have? Yeah. Go ahead and take all those things in and breathe it. And exhale. Gorgeous. So we're going to hear from our next duet. And then after that, we'll have a brief break. We'll breathe before we break. I also invite you to continue to breathe throughout the morning. I believe you can do it. I know that you can do it. I've seen you do it. So yes. So what I want to do now is invite up Nobuko Miyamoto and Kaewsith to come and sit and join us. Our next elders. As Teresa said, I'm Allison Delacruz, and as we talked about kind of who was going to introduce which duet, I was really excited that I got slated to introduce Nobuko and June. 10 years ago, I could have been June. I definitely see myself as an artist who has been blessed by knowing Nobuko and part of the artistic world that she has helped to create and continues to create here in Los Angeles, and have met many amazing artists, including Lynn. Toured with folks through Great Leap. And you may know about Nobuko and Great Leap. She actually started as a dancer in the 70s. One of my favorite things to know about her is, even though I know this is not really, but she was in the original West Side Story movie. So I just have moments of like, we were there, Chino was Filipino, what's up? And to know that that dancer who played Chino was a very good, deep,
Yes, and
Jose did, and he was part of Great Leap. So for me, I feel like, and I appreciate Donald and Lynn starting us off because I think you really helped hit the nail on the head for me in terms of where does history begin and where does the present and the future begin? Like, how much of that is about responding right now? What is this idea of us as cultural first responders? Are we first responding in that moment? Or is this moment that we respond to the moment that is the first, yeah? So I just want to open that up and to say that I see myself as part of this ongoing history and legacy of creation and activism in the Asian Pacific Islander community, and not just staying in the Asian Pacific Islander community, but similar to Lynn, opening up that space and looking at the connections between the different racial and cultural groups here in Los Angeles. So we're going to share a little bit of the work that June and Nobuko have brought, and it's actually a video. And you probably noticed as Donald was talking, the lights kind of got a little sexy and smooth. As you probably know if you're a theater maker, things were already cued, so we're living in the cues that exist. So I just want to be transparent about it. Just be transparent about it. I feel, yeah, okay. So we're gonna dim the lights a little. Do you want to explain? Yes, I'm so sorry, yes, please.
Okay, thank you so much for the very nice introduction. It's lovely to be here to share with all of you, some of you whom I've worked with. I just want to contextualize this first video and the second video here. The Great Leap has existed for 37 years because it has continually responded. We are a multicultural, multidisciplinary organization which recently started responding to the situation of that theater was very expensive to produce, and it's also, many people are looking at video and looking at their computer screens. So we started, and also responding to the environment, the changes in climate change. So this first video is the first of a few videos that we've created, and we want to continue creating, called eco-vids, using music, theater, and comedy, and science to get people to change how they live. The second video includes June in a residency, in a theater residency in Long Beach, which we did over a 1.5 year period recently.
What we gonna eat tonight? I don't know. Whatever it is, I brought my sticks.
I love my sushi, fills me with such delight. It's art and eating, wrapped up into one night. The crack of the chopsticks, virgin wood upon my lips, a ritual romance at my fingertips.
Why did you throw away, throw away, throw away? How many trees need to fall, y'all? Why do you throw away, throw away, throw away? Yeah.
I love my sushi,
All my people, every posse love chopping with their hashi.
fills me with such delight.
But it's hundreds of years of history chopped down into these billions of sticks that just get tossed to the ground. What?
The crack of the chopsticks,
That's crazy.
it's a ritual
The crash and the
romance.
fall of a tree sounds more like a love gone sour to me.
Sometimes I wonder why the sky is never blue.
Fewer trees, more CO2.
You know I care about the air,
Uh-huh.
but what can I do?
Well, here's a couple ideas. There's a gang of ways to save the day. Instead of throwing all the remains away, give them to kids to make art, for example, and make your own. I got some samples, ample designs for whatever you care. Everybody go get a portable pair. Need some, let me know, just text me. Remember y'all, the environment's sexy. So BYO chopsticks. For the forest, for the air. So when your kids grow up, it'll still be there.
Don't
All
you
my
know?
people, every posse love chopping with their hashi, but there's almost nothing costly and wasteful as watebashi. Hundreds of years of history chopped down into these billions of sticks that just get tossed to the ground. Hundreds of years of history chopped down into these billions of sticks that just get tossed to the ground. It's in your hands, woman, child, and man. It's in your hands. It's in your hands. It's in your hands. It's in your hands.
Every tree.
It's in your hands.
Every tree.
So how many of you bring your own chopsticks out there? How many of you have not thought about yeah, So that's why we did this. We're trying to think of subjects that affect people of color, especially because people of color have been left out of the environmental conversation. So we want to represent us and the subjects that we can do something about. So that's why our first one was about this. The second one that we did was called mottainai, which is about, is a Japanese word which means it's a shame to waste nature. It's a shame to waste. And the third one is about bicycling, which we did with Quetzal, the group. And so we hope that we can do another one soon with the Long Beach community about the air we breathe, which was the subject of, yes.
We're looking for an interested group of people that are going to be focused on finding what your stories are about growing up here, about living here. What are the things that you see in your communities?
We want to do it for the issue that is really the most burning issue of the planet, which is the environment.
Change the world's community, that artist creating free-spirited, collective-seeking community, that Asian American let's get our people together community, that hip-hop, neo-soul, vibe and love, and all the brown-skinned, conscious Africana community.
Breathing is easy. Breathing is easy. Good. So you don't have to speak fast, you know. You're telling your story.
You don't want to. You don't want It's one car, like this. Like that.
It teaches you how to lead.
how to be a good leader when you lead. Great Leap grew out of the need, actually out of the Asian American movement, and out of the need for us to begin to create a voice for ourselves.
Pollution in Long Beach is compounded from multiple sources related to industry. Long Beach pollution is affecting the health of our community and our children.
I feel like, when we can wrap our arms around and make it real for our own lives, like what is it like on my street? What is it like for my family? What is it like, on my block? That is a way to empower people to think about, why should we care? And do we want to make a change?
If we don't get involved, we will never be able to understand what it means to change for good.
Let the decision makers see the horror of it instead of just telling them.
We have to start support systems up and up. Well, we have to take care of our communities. Now we have to take care of what's ours. Unite to fight for our community.
I come from Cambodia, in Mukul. I live near the river.
There were very few cars.
No.
Only 6 buses in my town. Some people ride bicycles. And other on ox cart.
Roteco.
Every
20% of all traffic on the 710 freeway is trucks. 35,000 of them every single day.
This pollution's gonna end! I'm gonna make it happen! I'm gonna the air we breathe, the air we breathe, the air we breathe, the air. I've been breathing all this air for all my life. It's killing me and I can't really say why I breathe. These freeways on the side of my house are poison in my air. So let's stand up and make a change for people everywhere. The air we breathe, 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 oh, the air we breathe, the air we breathe, the air we breathe, the air we breathe, oh, the air we breathe, the air we breathe, we can change it, the air we breathe, the air we breathe, the air we breathe.
Well, this was such a touching, moving performance, and to see so many different generations here, different communities together doing this, it's fantastic.
The message is clear. We want for reading the air.
There was just something so beautiful about seeing women and the gentleman up here doing that
beautiful movements, and it was just really touching. It made me feel like these stories came from far away, and they landed and created a home here, and it just was very beautiful, and I'm proud to be part of Long Beach. Thank you.
I don't know what it was like for you. Mo, you want to say what it was like for you to do this?
Oh yeah, I really like that. I'm very lucky. Meet the teacher, teach me till me. I feel like I'm so happy.
It kind of reminded me of my grandmother who passed away. When I would play guitar and stuff like that, she used to cry, but I never understood why. But as I'm standing here and I see them come in and they sing and they dance, it's like now I understand why. It's like, it's the way it touches them, and as the way these women touched me. So it really made an impact on me.
I'm very touched that we come together and work on the environmental issue, which we're going to leave behind for our grandchildren and generation to come.
Well, I don't know about all the air that we breathe, but I know that it's something that we cannot see. But I love my city, although it's gritty. That's what it's like being in LBC. Now what is the thing that keeps me here? Can't be the dirty water or the Long Beach pier. It's not the air, it's not the sea. It's all about my community. Need that good air in my system. You are my good air in my lungs. Let me breathe that good air into my system. Will you be my good air in my lungs? Yeah, da 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 da.
So, one of Great Leap's programs is a program called the Collaboratory, in which we bring 6 to 10 emerging artists together. It's directed by Dan Kwong and assisted by Young Abe Park. And we try to train people or expose people to some of the techniques that we use in devised theater. This is a new word for me, devised theater. I said, we've been doing this devised theater for like 30 years. I didn't know it was devised. I just, you know. Anyway, so came through the door many young artists, and we've done 10 different semesters or whatever of these collaboratories. The last one was in Long Beach with a group called End Oil. And they wanted us to come to Long Beach to do something about the air quality, which is the worst air quality in the western United States. So June was part of a group actually before that did another collaboratory, and she just really stood out in our of the group because she's very, not only was she clearly an artist and an experimenter, and but she was also very deeply involved in community and not afraid to be an organizer. And so we picked her as sort of our main centerpiece for the Long Beach piece, to pull the community together, because you can't do a residency in a community you don't really, that you're not from, without having an anchor person there. And June became an anchor for us in Long Beach, and I would like you, June, to sort of elaborate a little bit more about what we did in Long Beach.
Well, check. Is this on?
So as Nobuko was saying, I first got involved with Great Leap in the collaboratory, a different collaboratory, I think 2 or 3 years ago, which was about the environmental impact of takeout food containers.
Very specific.
And it was really fun, really funny, but I think the most important lesson I took from that was that environmental injustice is not just an issue for people with privilege. You know, we see people, for example, like Greenpeace, who are out in the streets and make it this large, put it in this large global context. Which for a lot of us, that's not a priority in a lot of communities of color. It's like, I just want to know how I'm going to be able to eat or pay rent by the end of this month. Those are the most pressing issues. So what was really important to me in this process was making it relevant to our own lived experiences. It is our issue. So in the context of Long Beach and our project about the air quality, I didn't even know until getting involved in this process that our city has the worst air quality in the Western Hemisphere. And we have the highest rate of respiratory illnesses, asthma. Just 2 weeks ago, I know a 27-year-old who died of an asthma attack. And these stories are not too uncommon. And I want to relate it to what's been happening in New York, the situation with Eric Garner, how he died of an asthma attack. Well, it was really police brutality, and the brutality triggered his asthma. And what doesn't come into question is, how about the community he grew up in? What was the air quality like for him growing up, and why does it have to be that way? So in this process, I've learned the most important part of doing social justice work, and especially through the arts, is intersectionality. And we talked about how earlier our identities are multifaceted. It's not just an Asian American issue, it's not just a queer issue or an issue of the Black community. What are the issues that all of us can relate to and are connected with? And so I feel like with the environment, even though a lot of us may see it as this larger struggle, global warming, and oh, you know what, that's not really my issue. It is. And going back to the 710 freeway, consumerism. Like us, every time we buy something, it sounds really dark, but the more we consume, the more it actually has this great impact on environmental injustice, because it's the trucks that come down the 710 freeway that are, delivering at Walmart all over the nation these goods that we keep consuming. So the more we consume, and the ships, that come from China, we don't think about those things until you look at the statistics. But how do you explain statistics to community members? And so that's where Great Leap came in, and the community members who are also my friends, and finding out that so many of them suffer from respiratory illnesses that aren't talked about because it's very shameful. Our high schools, the football teams, they actually have the asthma kits, right? Just in case, because it's common, it happens. So I think we were able to move the community by bringing out our personal stories.
Also, this was a very interesting residency, because we had, when you talk about intersections, we had the intersection between these women from Cambodia who came, as a result of the killing fields, and who lost their husbands and, children and family members, and we're dealing with something like the environment, So how do you deal with a group of women who actually in Long Beach worked with the End Oil and went up and down the streets right in Cambodian town and did the research of how many smog shops and all of these things were totally polluting their communities. So
Over 40 within the two-mile radius on Anaheim Boulevard, which is considered Cambodia town.
Right. And so these women who were of my age, actually, but who seem, because they are immigrants, because they're very humble and they come from the countryside, really. Some of them had never seen theater before. They didn't know what theater was. So how do you create a theater piece with people who don't have a concept? They do have stories though. So we had to go through a big process of getting them comfortable about even short stories, and that the fact that they're speaking in Cambodian, and do we translate or do we allow them to speak in English? How do we deal with all these issues? Also, in this, so we used a lot of their own dances and songs that they sang from their childhood, and to take them back to their childhood days when Cambodia was peaceful, when the air quality and the water was clean, and how it's changed over these years, So that was one element, and the other element, we had a kid who was how old? 10 years old also, who came with his sister. So we were dealing with this huge gap of age as well. So it was an interesting residency and a theater piece that we tried to create over a period of a year and a half with two actually different groups to create a piece that represented what people of color in Long Beach face as different communities.
So I wish we were able to play the video because it shows our process, and there's not a lot of connection between the different generations. Long Beach has the largest Southeast Asian community because of what happened in the mid-1970s with the war. So we have the most Laotians, and especially Cambodians, the most Cambodians outside of Cambodia. What was really beautiful about this process, in addition to the intersectionality, was the intergenerationality. And even though there were language barriers, we were able to witness the elders tell the stories of their childhood and sing their songs. And for most of them, all of them, it was their first time ever being on a stage. And they're so used to people coming in to their space asking them what happened during the war. And people are tired of talking about the war. It's traumatic. And I think it was very healing in that process to bring them into a place where they could refer back to their childhood when the air quality was good, even though they live in these neighborhoods that are so polluted. But that's where we had the younger generation come in and talk about their own personal experience.
And I also, the response of the younger generations, how much love they gave to the elders and respect that they gave them. I mean, there was a beautiful synergy that was created from the respect that they had for both groups, that they had for each other.
So,
do you want to ask another?
Yes. So if you want to see the video, please go to YouTube, put in Collaboratory X. Okay.
And we'll play it.
Oh, great. Okay. I feel like we put the video in a nutshell. So, with everything that was just stated, I know Great Leap creates art that's reflective of our community's most urgent needs. My compelling question is, where do you trust the story carries on beyond yourself and all those who are involved in its manifestation? And so in regards to using art as a medium, how do we trust that what we have to create goes beyond dialogue and moves into action? I feel like that's a struggle a lot of us artists deal with.
It's really interesting because being an elder, which I have to keep saying, okay.
An elder. And I want to reclaim the term elder because we see it in our society, we see it as something that's shameful, but I see it as something that carries so much.
So I tell people I'm 75. And this is what 75 looks like. But because I've been doing this since I was 30, became an activist in the Asian American movement, mainly as a singer at that time, and a creator of songs and sort of a troubadour. I've been able to see over time, people have come to me who said, oh, I heard you at such and such a place, or I heard this album that you made at such and such a time in 1973, and that I still play the music from that, you know, and I can see that, and it's really affected, it changed my life. And I went, wow, that's amazing that, you know, a song or an album can change your life because before that time you didn't have anything that reflected you. That I played a role in that, and there were many others that did. But so through time I've been able to see different projects that we've done, that people will come forward and say, well, you know, when you did this, it affected me in a certain way, as I wanted to be an artist as a result of that. Or it started me getting into being an activist. And I'll use this example. I just came back from Japan in November, and we did a concert, 3 women, and one of them was from a group called Kohodo in Japan, another one from San Jose Daiko, and myself. And then we did a panel, sort of like this, and another day. And this young man came, out of campus, came strolling into the concert, and because he came to the concert, he came to the panel. And at the end of the panel, he stood up and he said, I'm going to carry your burden. How do I become an activist? What do I do now? And so I think that's the little spark that we want to light in people. It's not going to happen for everybody in the same way. I don't think there's any magic formula, but that it can be in a presence of a play that Lynn does or Donald does, and something strikes them and says, just like it did with you when you saw the play, Lynn, that you said, I want to do that. This is how things happen. And it happens, you know, some people want to be a movie star because they go to the movies. But our presence in the community is really important because it shows people out that there's an alternative to that. That you don't need big money, that you don't need big productions even to affect people strongly and deeply. And so that's why I think it's important to be a responder, to respond to our communities and do this kind of work that all of you are doing. So thank you. My question, okay, this is, I come from a family of immigrants. I'm a 3rd generation, but you're a 2nd generation. And I wonder, because it is usually the child of immigrants have this pressure of being American, of making it in America and having the security that their parents haven't had. And I want to know how you, who have made a huge leap in your life and through time to being very present and very modern and very future, how this has affected, being a child of immigrants has affected you in this scenario.
Ouch. I can say my sister and I are 11 years apart, and it's only the 2 of us. So through her experience and what my parents went through raising her without my grandparents around, I got to see what I didn't want. And that doesn't mean that my sister isn't wonderful, she is. But what I saw happening was we were losing our culture. And I speak the language well enough to get around. I can't really read or write. But every time I go back to my motherland, I feel this need to connect with my ancestry, my roots. yet I also have this struggle of being very American and not feeling like I belong there, and I feel like I belong here. So with me and my art, it is my connection to my ancestry in the best way I can contextualize it. And it's a very spiritual process for me. So even though I may not know the culture fully, I feel like, I do feel like it's a spiritual presence that speaks through me. And I don't know what other way to explain that. And I feel like it's just stories that have been passed down from generations after generation. And art is the best way to communicate how we feel and how we identify without having to use words.
Let us thank you.
But I do want to invite us to, again, come back to this process and just go ahead and take a breath in, what we heard from Nobuko and June, and exhale. And as you think about what are the questions that you have, what is still lingering? What is resonating? And what do you feel is unanswered? What questions do you have now? And so let's go ahead and bring those in. And exhale. Cool. So here's what I would like to do. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Connections. Successes. Identity. One more. What are you thinking about? Bamboo? Awesome. Yes. Roots. Anybody else? Awesome. So I just acknowledge that I think the facilitator in me wants to have us talk. So I just want to honor that you're holding a lot in your containers. I appreciate there are practitioners in the room who get both the honesty in that statement and the joke. But just to really honor, right? We're holding a lot in our containers in a culture that invites us to dump a lot, yeah? So I'm honoring that. Welcome back. So let's go ahead and take our collective breath back in. And exhale. Awesome. I'm excited to introduce our next introducer, Rose Portillo, the Associate Director of About Productions.
Bless you for making this fun. I'm just so honored that Teresa Chavez, you got these people in the room. It's so fabulous. So next up, old man. And now that's the part we got to remove from the elder status, right? My friends are not elders yet. Well, actually they are. So, Ruben Amavisca Murua, así. I am so impressed with this man. He's born in Mexicali, border town, immigrant parents, farm worker, seamstress, kind of the story of many of the people that you work with consistently. Full container on the floor. But we're going to stay in our chairs. Ruben is he's been working with Teatro Sinergia since '88. In '93, he became the artistic director, and then in '94, he founded Frida Kahlo Theater. I am consistently impressed with the immediacy of his response. We were reading in the newspaper about the women of Juarez, and it felt like 2 weeks later, the play was up, and he was addressing the community needs. We recently heard about the travesty of the 43 youth and the murders, and the play is up. So the man wastes no time. Director, choreographer, writer, designer, he wears all the hats that many of us do, and makes it happen. So I'm just gonna turn it over and let him talk, and Alex as well.
Okay, let me try this without it because I'm a theater person, I'm sorry.
It's for the video.
Oh, it's for the video, okay.
That's
sorry.
different.
All right. Well, bios, they are kind of tricky. Yes, I was born by the border, Mexicali. My mom was a seamstress, worked in one of the first maquiladoras in town. My father worked across the border and the fields, all in California. Living by the border makes you feel immediately you have no place. We are in Mexico, but we're naturally, the culture is totally different from the rest of the country. But you're not in America either. Seminal moments in my life was my father abandoned my mother before I was even born. So I grew up in different households. My mom was working all the time. So depending, she had a fiery temper. So depending if she had fought with her sister or her cousin, so we left in this house is hell all over the place. So I grew up with a sense of not belonging. Another point was my father's family, the Jehovah's Witnesses. Yes, I call them Jehovah's Witnesses. And my mother, they are deeply Catholic, even worse. So instead of becoming one of them, I totally rejected religion, even though, especially when I was 12, my mother died when I was 10. So again, we started jumping from one place to another, my brother and me. And we lived for a while with a person related to my mother. He was an uncle of my mother. And everybody called him Grandpa. So we called him Grandpa, even though I don't believe, and I hope he's burning in hell. When I was 12, they took me to a priest because I was reading too much. And the priest told me that my sin was of pride, that I wanted to be more, that and that I had to conform, resign to my lot. And my response mentally was, "Fuck you, asshole." Because I already was questioning a lot of things about religion and church and all that, especially at that point, it's like, oh, so if I want to improve myself, that is wrong. That's the whole role of religion in our lives, in our history. I'm a passionate historian. I love, most of my plays are about history. I rarely write about myself because even though I'm very egocentric, who the fuck wants to know about me? But even though also in my plays, I pour a lot of myself into it in all my plays. So then I finally kind of started getting a sense of belonging, and I decided to immigrate to Mexico City by myself to study theater. I studied theater, I work in theater there, and again, I'm beginning to feel comfortable, and I decided to immigrate. First, the idea was to go to Poland or Czechoslovakia because most of my teachers study there, but ended up in Los Angeles. And again, no sense of belonging. Not only here, I don't know if you have noticed, I have an accent. They did not see me as Mexican because I did not speak with the East LA accent of the guy just across the border. I'm sorry, I learned English in college. And also, my face I don't look Mexican. So again, it was this displacement, even within the Latino community, what I was looking for. Yes, I want to belong to something, but I don't want to belong to a person or a group. So I started working with everybody until I found this. And Synergia felt right, mainly because I made it. But we worked with everybody. We worked with I know groups in the Latino community, they only work with Chicanos, or they only work with Mexicans, or I don't give a flying duck. I work with everybody who walks my door, and as long as you are willing to put the time, as long as I'm sorry, that's maybe a limitation, most of our plays are in Spanish, so you have to be able to speak Spanish fluently. But also all the work, because the reason I'm talking about my background is because all the work I do, it has to do with the community. When I wrote the piece Frida, it was about me as an artist trying to discover the world, and we wrote it before Frida was known here. when it started coming out. Then the same happened with Mujeres de Juárez. I was working at LA Times, and I kept reading these notices coming from Ciudad Juárez. So I look for material. I'm an accidental playwright, because usually I write because I don't see what I want to say, so I have to write it myself. And that happened with Mujeres de Juárez. I looked and looked, and I did not find anything that was interesting to me for my community, because most of them were written in Mexico, assuming that people knew what was going on. And here, our community did not know. So we did it, and it was one of our greatest successes. The same with Soldaderas. And Soldaderas basically is the story of my mother, my aunt, even though it takes place in the 1920s, these women who fought in the revolution, and I mean really fought. They fought the prejudices of the time, they fought sexism, and they kept fighting until the end. So it was about them, but it became about the situation of women in our society, in the past and the present, in Mexico and here in Los Angeles. And then Situación Desaparecido, our latest project. We usually take about 6 months to 2 years to create a new project. And this one, it took me about 6 weeks. I felt the need to talk about it, that 43 students were disappeared by the police, and the government at the local, state, and federal level was doing nothing, and even our own government, the United States, is doing nothing about it. It has not expressed its support or anything for these families that for 4 months now, they don't know what happened to their children. As a parent, and as a Mexican, and as a human being, it upsets me, it infuriates me that this happened. So that's why we had to do it. And one of the things I noticed, and the whole thing, it was they refer to the 43, like a number. Yeah. So what's the humanity? No, each one is a story, each one has a family, each one has somebody waiting for them. And that's what it prompted. We did it, I started researching for people who talk about these students, and created this piece with 11 actors, bare stage, very fast, to give back the humanity to these 43 students. They are not only 43, they're somebody's child, they're somebody's brother. And that's what we try to do, and that's the kind of work I like to do. I don't want to go to the theater to see something nice. I hate nice. The worst insult you can tell me about any of my work is that it's nice. I want people to feel upset. When I wrote Mexican History 101, which was a total spoof about the official Mexican history, but based on real facts that has been obscured in our history, I was feeling insulted that nobody was leaving the theater. When I put the fathers of our history fucking each other and doing all these things that they did. But there is now history. And finally one day, and it was a theater group that was even better. They came, they were 8, and they were so upset that they left the intermission. And then they came back 6 months later with a show on their own, revering the Mexican history. Oh, that felt so good. So that's the type of work. I don't want you to sit there passively. I want you to be enraged. I want you to be crying. I don't want you to be indifferent. Just the last fall at Encuentro, I made myself to force myself to see all the shows. Because sometimes, like you say, we are so encapsulated in the work we do and all the problems we have that we don't see the work of other people. So I did it, and it was a great experience. I remember when I was in college just a few years back, that I would go and see everything. And it was moved, sometimes I was just like, what? But still is an experience. So I guess I took too much time, but that's my job. I'm the director. Okay, you have your
Hi, yes. So my name.
Do you want me to play the sample? Or?
Okay. Yeah. So the clip is from the play Situación Desaparecido.
No sabemos nada de él. Y exijo, como ciudadana, como familiar y como ser humano, la presentación con vida de Jesús Giovanni Rodríguez Tratempa y la de sus 48 sociedad.
Tiene 20 años y le dicen el Spider.
Porque cuando corre brinca, o sea, no corre bien. Es más, él tiene ese estilacho para correr, brincando como si estuviera colgando de la araña. Le ponía de su parte él. Le hacía así como cuando el hombre araña, échate la araña.
Y además, muy flaquito.
Y se está preparando para ser maestro bilingüe. Él habla una lengua indígena.
Él y los otros muchachos que se preparan para ser maestros bilingües vienen de pueblos todavía más pobres que los de nosotros, porque su familia tiene un grupo musical que lleva ese mismo nombre, ¿no?
Es un grupo tropical, entonces a cada rato se la pasa cantando canciones. Y siempre se la pasa bailando con cumbias y canciones tropicales, pues.
Y dice que según eso toca la trompeta y la tarola, ¿no?
Yo nunca lo vi hacerlo, pero le creo. Sí.
Pero en buena onda. No payaso, pues. Me siento tan impotente, encabronado. Quiero que los regresen a la escuela.
La normal de Ayotzinapa cuenta con campos de cultivo, donde los alumnos siembran granos y otras hortalizas, y donde además tienen algunas vacas y cerdos, con lo cual cumplen parte de su alimentación, ya que los recursos que para dicho fin destina el gobierno estatal nunca alcanzan. Siempre hace falta.
Marco Antonio es el tuntún. Es mi amigo. Lo conozco hace 5 años. Nunca lo pude hacer enojar. Por más que lo intentaba, nunca lo pude hacer enojar y lo extraño.
Jorge, o el Chabelo, es una persona tranquila y muy sensible.
Puedes enojar con él porque lo va a sentir mal fácilmente.
Me gusta su tranquilidad, su paciencia. Él no te dice las cosas de mala fe. Él nunca te saca una grosería. Él es más tranquilo. Nunca falta el respeto y nunca alburea a nadie. Él es de los que se ve más joven de la casa activista.
Sus padres aguardan en la cancha de la normal de Ayotzinapa, junto con todos los otros padres de nuestros compañeros que han sido secuestrados, y se abrazan al hablar de él. Soy trabajador de la obra, albañil. En estos momentos estoy desempleado. Pero lo que importa ahorita es este problema.
El rapto de nuestros muchachos. Y queremos que se solucione de manera inmediata.
Alexander tenía el firme anhelo de ser maestro. Nadie le podía quitar esa idea. Tenía 19. Le interesaba mucho dar clases. Era buen muchacho. Somos campesinos y él nos ayudaba en el campo, pero quiso estudiar. Yo le exijo a la autoridad que haga bien su trabajo, que no tapen a los culpables de la masacre que cometieron los policías de Iguala y su alcalde. ¡Queremos justicia! ¡Ay, me mataron a mi chamaco!
Para no lucine. Nadie la normal gana cabeza de liquero. Para nulo. Pachi liquero. No nena cabeza de liquero. Mi hijo Felipe Arnulfo tiene 20 años. Somos de Rancho Papa, municipio de Ayutla. Somos campesinos.
Y es injusto que una persona que dedica su tiempo al estudio, alguien que tiene características de esforzarse, sufra consecuencias graves a manos del gobierno.
Es muy cariñoso con su mamá, sus hermanos. Es muy amigable. Si bien es cierto que casi no habla, cuando entró a la casa activista cambió. Yo le dije una vez, Cosa fiera te has vuelto. Porque argumentaba muy bien. Cuando acabamos la primera semana a prueba como normalistas, a toda mi sección había quedado de ir a mi casa a comer, bañarnos en la presa y divertirnos. Pero ese día, Luis Ángel fue el único que llegó. Y comimos, cortamos mangos, fuimos a la presa y jugamos fútbol. Él es uno de los que más siento su ausencia.
Estos zapatos me los compró un mes antes que lo desapareciera. Ya se me están gastando de tanto buscar a mi chamaco. No me los voy a quitar hasta que lo encuentre.
Panotla. Así le decimos.
Pero también le decimos Marinela, porque en una ocasión fuimos a Jalisco a un movimiento. Se levantaron unos carros con producto. Y el chofer de uno de esos no quiso manejar. Se salió y se fue. Pero Panotla se llevó la camioneta, que era de la empresa Marinela.
Y él tenía mucha ilusión de ser maestro, para ayudar a los niños y a los señores adultos a leer y escribir. En nuestra comunidad hay muchas personas rezagadas en educación. Y su ilusión solamente era ayudar.
No es justo que los traten así a los muchachos. Su único delito fue estudiar y recaudar fondos para hacer sus prácticas. No se vale que les trunque sus carreras, sus vidas.
¡El gobierno se los llevó! ¡Ellos los desaparecieron!
Ellos que respondan por eso.
Mientras otra telenovela termina.
Mientras otro programa de chismes comienza.
Mientras esperamos el nuevo partido de la selección.
Mientras no nos ocultemos detrás de él. Si a mí no me molestan, no me importa.
Los pandilleros, los asesinos, los criminales.
Los policías, los soldados, los judiciales. Los corruptos, los empresarios, los políticos.
Harán de las suyas sin problemas.
Los violarán, raptarán, golpearán y asesinarán.
Si no levantamos la voz contra la injusticia. Si no ponemos nuestro brazo junto al brazo del otro.
Si no gritamos nuestra impotencia.
Si no luchamos contra la inercia.
El Estado es culpable.
Pero también nosotros somos culpables.
Por agacharnos.
Por callarnos.
Por colaborar. Por no protestar.
Hoy fueron nuestros compañeros.
Nuestros hermanos. Nuestros hijos.
Mañana podrán ser los suyos.
La injusticia contra uno.
Es la injusticia contra todos.
No los olvides.
Nuestros países no son cosas comunes.
Pensamos, por eso nos desaparecen. No seamos pasivos.
La rebeldía es un arma cargada de fuerza.
Que no haya paz.
Ni perdón. Ni olvido.
Hasta encontrarlos.
Vivos se los llevaron.
¡Vivos los queremos!
¡No los olvides!
Son los 43 de Yotzinapa.
Todos somos Ayotzinapa.
Todos somos Ayotzinapa. Todos somos Ayotzinapa.
¡Todos somos Ayotzinapa!
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30.
And each one of the 43 students, they bring a silhouette with the face of the student and the name plastered in front of them. And 1, 2, 3 actors come, and they're the father, mother, a brother, a fellow student that tell us a little bit who this person is. I don't want to say was, because with the exception of Alexander Mora Venancio, we don't know what happened to the other 42. So they have, and sometimes they're very funny stories, like this kid who has a bad leg, so he kind of walks strange, and then he would run, and they nicknamed him Spider-Man. So even instead of taking insult on it, the kid started running and doing or the other one, or the Scooby, you know, the Scooby, the Shaggy. That he looks like Shaggy, like the drawing of Shaggy. So they call him Shaggy. And the SpongeBob guy who would tell the jokes and laugh like SpongeBob. And of course, there are others that are extremely painful. The mother crying because her son was killed. By chance, that student closed our show, and just a few days after we opened, actually they identified his remains. Well, not his remains, it's one piece about this size of a leg bone and a molar. That's all the parents have to bury. And so it was the end of our show, so we changed it, and we keep changing, we keep adding new things that come up in the show, and at the end we have a long conversation with the audience, questions, comments, exchange of ideas about it. So that's basically, and so you see, Alex is right there.
With hair.
Go ahead.
Hi, so my name is Alex Angeles. My relationship with Ruben Amavisca is not one of a normal mentor-mentee kind of thing. I started going to the Frida Kahlo Theater to take acting classes with another Ruben Garfias. And I'm still in classes with him every Saturday. It's been about 10 years that I've been going to the Frida Kahlo Theater. And hanging around the theater, and I've actually had the chance that once, when Ruben Garfias couldn't teach, you subbed in for him. And it's awesome, being at the theater so much, hearing about the plays, hearing about Women of Juarez, hearing about Frida Kahlo. It's awesome, like this guy does it all. I've seen him run box office, run the lights, direct the plays. Like, this guy is the one-man army. Set design, wardrobe, everything you could count on it. And so to see this guy doing all this stuff, I became really interested in it. And 2 years ago, oh actually no, when I was about 14, 15, you did the Yo Maté a Pancho Villa, I killed Pancho Villa. And
I wrote that part for him.
And so you can imagine like me feeling so honored and amazed that I'm actually going to work with Ruben Amavisca, the guy that like actually putting on professional productions with actors. He's well revered for Frida Kahlo, who was done in Poland or
Iceland, Latvia, Frida, Iceland, Latvia, and Belgium.
So definitely a very well-known person. And so when I worked with him, it was such a big honor for me, and it was awesome. And so as the years progressed, I started to work with him more and more. The history of Mexican History 101 on Spanish, my more favorite title, Historia de México para un idiota. And of course, I'm the idiota. That's his nombre de cariño, his kind name to me. And so I get to work with him more and more, and one thing, I think when we did I Killed Pancho Villa, one thing that really struck me that I knew that I wanted to be more part of the theater company and working with him was that one of the characters in the story was General Felipe Angeles, and my last name is Angeles. And I knew somewhere in my family history that there was these roots, and I did a little more research. I talked to my grandma, and apparently the general in the play is actually my great-great-great-grandfather, who was a general in the Mexican Revolution who fought alongside Pancho Villa. So,
one of our best heroes, and he was totally betrayed by Venustiano Carranza.
Yeah, so it was amazing for me to learn more about that, to be in the play and learn more about my actual lineage. And so it was just so amazing. And ever since then, we've been working so much. Women of Juarez, and then now Situación Desaparecido. And you guys keep going back to the term activism. This man is probably one of the biggest, most amazing theater activists I know, putting plays that are always talking about stuff that need to be talked about, when they need to be talked about. As he discussed, the Situación Desaparecido, these 43 students had to be talked about now. It couldn't wait any longer, and so he pulled his resources together, he wrote this play, and it's up. And it was actually going to Tijuana next week, but due to circumstances and he said, she said, the theater actually was canceled and we are not going to Mexico. But
no censorship, no repression.
But we're still here presenting it, and that's what's important, to get the word out. And so again, this is one of the biggest activists. Talk about first responders for the community. I live near Frida Kahlo Theater, so I am one of those examples that I am from the community. I found about the theater, and now, thanks to him and thanks to the other Ruben and all the other artists in the theater, I'm so involved in the arts. I've starting with Frida, now I've worked with the Latino Theater Company. I've worked with East-West Players. I've worked with the Actors Gang. I've worked with so many different, I've worked with the Shakespeare Center too. And it just from starting within the community. And so I see how important it is theaters are really in the community, how it could affect one person, and that one person, it could change their lives completely. So I'm very honored and blessed to be able to work with Ruben Amavisca in this project. My first question.
Yes, totally.
Yeah. Okay. So my question for Ruben, all your pieces are historical. Soldaderas, it's about the Adelitas during the Mexican Revolution. I killed Pancho Villa. So since they're all historical, why do you feel history is so important to be talked about?
It has to do with my whole intro, the sense of belonging. Where am I? Who am I? Where do I fit in? I did not discover theater, even though I was a theater child, in the sense that every time, the first time I remember, I was like 4 years old in kindergarten, and the teacher said, "Oh, who wants to dance? Who wants to sing?" I was the first, and since my mom was a seamstress, she would do the outfits. So I was a clown, but I was not a regular clown. I was a crying clown. Then in first grade, we performed a little piece at school, and it just kept going. When I was 12, I had this horrible teacher. We hated each other tremendously. But she would give us a present on our birthdays, usually just a trinket she would find somewhere. And she gave me 2 tickets to see a play. And the theater was just like 2-3 blocks away from home. I didn't find anybody to go with me, so I went by myself. I've seen the building, but I never walked into the building. And I don't remember the play, but I think it was Prisoner of 6th Avenue. I remember because the name of the guy stuck with me, Neil Simon. In our slang in Mexico, Neil is no, Simon is C, so it's like, it's a kind of strange name, this guy. Even though it was my first play, I was already a critic. I didn't think it was well acted or directed. But what caught my attention was the control of the artist over the audience. I didn't think it in that moment at that level, but it caught, like, this guy makes the people feel whatever they want. So for me, that I never felt control in my life, that was a big thing. So, because I said, I want to study ballet. Oh, that's for fags. Oh, I want to study opera. Oh, those people just scream. I want to study everything. I said, no. Like somebody said in a movie, they gave these peasants a giraffe, and they wanted to put it to plow the field. No. It was not because I wanted to be a dancer or a singer. I just wanted to explore the things beyond the telenovela or beyond going to church on Sundays. I did not know what it was, but I had that journey, and it was just to belong. And so first I went to history because it reassures you, kinda. When I grew up, I said, well, most of this history is bullshit, but it grounded me. It gave me control over my life. Like I said, we were bouncing from one house to the next, to one relative to the next, until I was able at 16 just to get on my own. So that's why history was very important to me. And it gave me that sense of belonging to something. It was tenuous, it was not real, but it gave me that sense. And now I use it to say other things, like I said with soldaderas. It's not precisely, yes, we talk about these women who are so important in our lives, and I wish you could go back and just read about these women who could barely read, most of them could not, and they were carrying their children and their wares, and they could kill their husbands, and they would take the arm and start shooting too. I mean, it's amazing, but the play was transformed into the situation of women in our society, in the present, the past, in Mexico, and here. We still have a lot of inequities. And so I use it to say something. I place them in the past. I love Brecht. I placed the things in the past, but with a connection very direct and real to the present. Now you want my question? Well, it's a little bit a mixture of you two guys. I hate you. You beat me. First, because my question, being the son of immigrants and your second generation, by the way, I love your parents and I love the parents of all the students more than the students, because the effort they make every Saturday, every Wednesday, whatever the class is, to take the kids. I didn't have that. I did not have it. I wanted it. And the answer I was given when I was 12, when I was the best grades at school, and I got a scholarship, and I said, well, let's see how you do it, because we're not gonna pay for your junior high. That's the cruelest thing that's ever anybody told me, said to me, because that's why I said, I hope he's burning in hell, because he believed in it. But why choose theater? And why would you choose us?
I think it kind of relates to the feeling of not belonging. I have a condition called spina bifida, which is funny enough that later on through research I found out Frida Kahlo, it's confirmed that she had it? Because it's still no. Oh, okay, but I've heard stories that people are like, oh, Frida Kahlo had it, and I'm like, that's funny. I kind of, again, growing up, I've always constantly been in and out of the hospitals, medications and stuff like that, and all these medical issues. And so at school, again, being taunted and stuff because I limp, and I've had all these medical problems. So again, I had that no sense of belonging. And once I found the theater where actors depend on each other, where your partners, as the way I've learned it, you're supposed to make your partner be the most important person in the world. So that feeling that whoever I'm acting with, and they look at me that way, that I'm the most important person in the world that they're supposed to. The more we try to make each other look better, the better we both look. That's everything I've ever wanted, to find that sense of belonging. And I found that family that I've always wanted, being an only child as well. I didn't have any brothers and sisters. My siblings were my pets. I love animals. And so I found that with the class at Frida Kahlo, which I'm still fortunate to be sharing the stage with them, a few of them, and with you and all the other actors at Frida Kahlo, that sense of being able to rely on each other, being able to have fun, and also be taking it seriously when we get to work and stuff like that. And so it all comes back to a sense of belonging, finding your community, finding your family within that. And that's what I love about Frida Kahlo.
Before we cut this one, if you have a chance, come around 11 on Saturday and watch their class. It has evolved from a bunch of little kids. And now we have an African-American blind kid, 4 in wheelchair with different stages of disabilities. Actually, they are sick. Half of the group is with disability in some way or another. But it's beautiful how they have come together and how the teacher tries to work with them and incorporate these stories into the shows they do. I mean, I don't have the patience to deal with children. The only one I deal with is my own, and I love them. It's my greatest achievement and accomplishment, and don't let me start talking about it because I won't stop. But it's great what they are doing, what the teacher is doing with this. Again, people who have no family, because they adopted from this kind of family center, and they go every Saturday and spend time to learn acting. But most than learning actor is just becoming a family, which is the most important for us.
Yeah, the guy that leads that class, Ruben Garfias, he's another genius. He's writing right now that we're working on this complex. It's called Noir Town. It's got so many levels to it. It's think Inception on stage. There's so many different levels to this story, and it's intense. And to see these kids, so as Ruben mentioned, there's this. I think he's like 18. He's a blind African American kid. We have one kid in a wheelchair that also has spina bifida. That is a more severe than I have, and we have another young kid that has cerebral palsy who, God, every single time he does it, he goes up and he does Hamlet, the monologue, and every single time he does it, I've never seen anyone do it in that way, and it's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Like, I could see that guy being Othello, like that's how amazing he is, and he's also African American, so. All these kids with disabilities that come up and do these amazing things, and Ruben Garfias works with them. As Ruben says, the doors are always open. Every Saturday we're there, and hopefully by the summer the play will be up, and it's going to be a real great work.
So we're going to transition. So as the transition happens, I want to invite the rest of us to go ahead and take our breath in and just acknowledge what we got from Alex and Ruben. We haven't already exhaled. And let's do one more breath before we can reconfigure. What are you still thinking about? What do you want to ask? What does this inspire you to consider for your future? Let's breathe that in. And exhale. Gorgeous. So I'm going to introduce the next introducer, Teresa Chavez, as we welcome our last set of duets. It's not just a duet, it is now a trio. Let's welcome Teresa.
Is this on? There we go. I'm really honored to introduce, I was honored to introduce all of the people I introduced today, but Randy was, again, like one of the other elders, was like, I'll be there. I'm on the same page. I want to be part of this. I want to tell my story to other communities in LA. We have a special relationship with Native Voices because we also have been doing our work at the Autry National Center, and so we're kind of like a sister organization with Native Voices. So I'm going to just do a brief bio. It's a little different from what you have in your program. Randy is the producing artistic director and co-creator. And I also wanted to introduce Jean because Jean Bruce Scott, who's up here, she's the other co-creator. So just to recognize her as well. Thank you for being here. So they're the co-creators of Native Voices at the Autry, the U.S.'s only equity theater company that focuses exclusively on producing work by Native American, Alaska Native, and First Nations playwrights. It's the only equity theater company dedicated to producing new works by Native American playwrights, they have been hailed by critics as a virtual who's who of American Indian theater artists, a hotbed for contemporary Native theater, deeply compelling and a powerful and eloquent voice, which we all know. I hope that if you haven't been to the Autry to see their work, I hope that you come to the next piece, which we're going to hear about in a second here. They were founded in 1993, and as I mentioned, became a resident theater company at the Autry National Center in 1999. So with that, take it away. Thank you, Randy. Oh, and I'll give you your mic.
Thank you, Teresa. So thank you to Rose, Allison, and Teresa for the vision to bring us together and to tell these stories. And I'm so inspired by Nobuko and Lynn and Ruben for making places for people to belong and to tell stories. And of course, that's what we have in common, right? We've made a place. We've made a space to do something important. So how many people have seen a play by Native American? Right on. I figured that was preaching to the crowd here. Good, so we're sort of 50-50. Native Americans have an unusual place in the people who are outside the mainstream. The thinking is there were between 15 and 60 million inhabitants of this land in 1491. The play we're doing coming up is set in 1880. There were about 200,000 Native Americans left in 1880. Very purposeful ethnic cleansing of the land. And in the 1880s, there was a choice in this country. Would we annihilate the final 200,000? Or could we annihilate the culture and disappear the people altogether through education? So that's the specific, we all have this history thing in common. And you know, that's such a heavy thought. You think, boy, I don't know that I want to see that on stage, that genocide, that ethnic cleansing. And so one of the things we do as theater artists is we think about the really important stories and how an audience might be drawn in to listen. That's the craft. And all of us, what we had in common today were we tell stories. And we want to tell something that matters, and we want to make a place, particularly this conversation about place for young people to make their art. So this story that we're telling, Off the Rails, is Shakespeare's Measure for Measure meets Blazing Saddles if the Muppets were producing. So we're wildly silly in looking at a very serious subject. One of my teachers in life said, if you think about something and you watch it, a lot of times you'll laugh. When you're watching something and you feel, you'll cry. So we try to tell this story from a distance, and we're using some of Shakespeare's plot and character twists. And of course, we've modernized it quite a bit, not only in the 1880s, but it's very anachronistic, it's modern. So the women are much smarter than the men. And the women save the day in our story. So that's our 1880s Off the Rails. We have many conflicts within the Native community on that play. One of the Native characters is saying, I'm gonna make as much money as I can. It's the only way the white people are ever gonna respect me. I'm gonna make my money. And someone else says, I'm gonna work within the system. I'm gonna change things from inside out. Well, those people are gonna fight, aren't they? So, you know, and you maybe even fall in love. So we've got some real fun stuff going on in the play. And of course that parallels some of the conversations happening in Native America today. We're well beyond that 200,000. We're pushing up close to 3 million. And here in Los Angeles, you know, we're one of the largest urban centers for Native American people in the country. People were moved here in the 50s, relocated on purpose, as sort of a last step in that dispersing the culture, and put to work in all the factories out here. And of course, a lot of people came of their own accord to chase that dream, like I did, you know, to be in television, to be in film. So those are the two kinds of populations we have out here, and that's who we serve with our work at Native Voices at the Autry. So one of the things I want Elizabeth Francis, Robert Vestal to talk about is we've traditionally focused on writing plays, telling stories of Native Americans, creating that space. This is the next generation of leadership, and we're in a very transparent process of succession. Jeannie and I are of an age where we should be moving into elderly things, and these folks are taking over the company. And one of the things that's happening is they've formed an ensemble. So they're going to talk with you about how that ensemble's come together, what their vision of the ensemble is, and they're making this up, right? I mean, you basically started this work in September. So this is fresh, and these are the voices of the new leadership.
All right, thank you, Randy. Hello, everyone. I wrote my stuff down, so I'm just going to kind of read it mostly. My name is Robert Vestal. I'm a Cherokee with my dad's people hailing from eastern Tennessee. I'm an actor mostly, though I'm also a writer and director and whatever else I need to be. I guess Ruben is one of my new heroes now. And I'm also a lead, what we call a lead artist in the Native Voices Artist Ensemble. Now I've worked with Native Voices since 2002, and then last year I got a call from Jean Bruce Scott, asking me if I'd be interested in helping lead this artist-centered ensemble. And pretty much whenever Jeannie calls, I say yes. So a few of us got together and we talked about what the ensemble could be and what we might want it to be, and we kicked around a few ideas. We then held auditions and we saw a lot of familiar faces, the people that have worked with Native Voices before, and I'm happy to say a lot of new faces. And from there we selected what would become the beginning of the ensemble, and even since then it has grown even more. We've added more people to it. And despite being a Native American ensemble, we've got a pretty diverse group. We have tribes from Canada and Alaska all the way down to Peru. We got mixed bloods and full bloods and reservation Indians and urban Indians. From elders on down to our youngest member is 16. Now we generally meet once a week, and in the beginning we did a lot of ensemble building exercises, a lot of improvisation and breaking the ice type stuff, and we continue to do that as we try to meet once a week. And I think really what we're doing is we're trying to create a safe place for artists to be vulnerable and to explore their works. Native Voices, for those of us that have been involved, it's already it's a second family to us, and everybody uses that word family. And with the ensemble, I think we're trying to solidify that idea even more, to create this artistic home where we can explore as actors and writers, directors, producers, and whatever else is needed. We have different workshops that we'll do every week, and we'll continue to do that stuff. Now, as far as what we've done since August last year when we started, we kind of went all out on our first project. So this season of Native Voices the theme is the Indian boarding schools. And so part of the first Look series, which was in September, we created a play based on documented boarding school stories. And it's currently titled Then and Now. We did that we improvised, and we wrote, and then we critiqued, and then we rewrote. And it had music and rich characters and poignant scenes, and it dealt with fairly heavy issues. And we put that up. We did that inside of a month, and we put a reading of it up in front of an audience. And we're really proud of it. We're currently polishing and shaping that piece with hopes of being able to tour that show to schools and universities, to places in Indian country, and wherever else we can take it. Then the next thing right after that, we were into the Native Voices Short Play Festival, which the ensemble was able to people with actors and directors and stage managers and what have you. And then coming up, as Randy mentioned, we have Off the Rails, which some of the ensemble members are cast in that, and other ensemble members will support that play in whatever ways needed. So the last thing I want to say before I hand it over to Liz is that so our mission, as we're sort of forming, and we're a new ensemble, and we're coming up with our mission statement. In a general sense, our mission seems to be twofold. One is to continue what Native Voices has done, which is find these stories out there in Indian country, be them from reservations or urban or wherever, from mixed or whatever the stories are. There's a ton of those, and to explore those stories and let those voices be heard. I think a lot of, when I say Native American or American Indian, there's an image that gets conjured up in people's minds. And this image is one that wasn't necessarily created by Native Americans. It was by other people that wrote these stories or made these films. And one of the things we'd like to do is sort of reclaim our identity. So that when I say American Indian, it's something more that we have a hand in of what that image is that's going to be conjured up in your head. And so the other side of our mission, as I talked about, is creating this artistic home where we have Native artists here in LA that are practicing, that are doing it, and you can point to this place and having a presence, say Native Voices. That's there's some Indians there, if you're ever looking for any. That's kind of from there. Liz will pick it up.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Francis. I'm really stoked to be here. I'm from San Diego, so I say stoked. And it's such an honor to be here with my elders, my colleagues, my peers. Something I think that's what's really great about, for me, for being here and being able to speak about Native voices is there's 3 things that I really love. I mean, there's a lot of things I really love, but I really love theater. I love theater. I love TED Talks, and I love quotes. So I'm gonna say a little quote, especially since Martin Luther King Day just happened. Martin Luther King said, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter." I think what's unique about all of the theater companies that are here is we're all trying to tell our stories, because I keep hearing this need for belonging. That's a term that keeps coming up. In our Native Voices Ensemble, there are 22 right now, I think, 22, 25 artists who are looking for that sense of belonging. I personally, I have a mixed background. So I grew up in San Diego, California, which I'm super stoked about. I have my background, my ancestry is Cherokee, Filipino, and Dutch, English, Caucasian. So when you put all that together, I grew up in a really diverse area where I did not grow up in a hyphenated America. I grew up amongst a mixture of people who really just saw each other as people. Fast forward, college in LA, woohoo, you can play everything you want, right? I get out of college and I am looking for a place to work, to belong, and to tell stories. And I was in the unique position, because of my heritage, to be able to work with actually many of you here, whether it's in the Asian American community, the Latino community, and even with a few theater companies in the African American community. And when I got to Native Voices, the term family keeps coming up, because it was a place where, although I had the opportunities to work with several groups, I don't know that I felt as if I belonged. And I think we're still searching for that, honestly. But I felt compelled to tell all of the stories that I had heard. Now, when it comes to my Native American background, there are many stories, because of how I grew up, that I hadn't heard and I couldn't find. And I think that's something that Native Voices and the ensemble is very committed to. It's to not only telling our stories now and how, as Native American people, we are alive. We are not only in a historical context, but also looking for a way to bridge that gap, so that people understand that not only are there the images that you have seen, and there is sort of an ethnocide that has happened on purpose, but no, we are still alive, we're thriving, and actually we're here in America. It's not as if we'd been moved from one country to another. We were here, and we still are. And so I think what's great about the ensemble and going forward with Off the Rails, which I am going to have everyone raise their hands who will come see it. That's right, because I'm not afraid to market. Yeah. So please come see our show. Is I really want to say, this is relating to TED Talk. So I heard this TED Talk from an anthropologist, and he said that we're at a unique position. He was talking about tribes that he'd seen around the world. Many included some, he talked about Sioux Indians, I believe. And he said that we're at a unique place where we have a decision to either, and many people actively endorse or passively accept the destruction of diversity. And so we're at a place, every theater company here, I think, is at a unique place to not only create the work that is important to them, but to not be passive. Because a friend of mine who she identifies as Black and of the gay community, and we were talking about the Sony hack, and she said, "Oh my God, everything's impossible. How?" And she said, "I just don't know as an artist if that's my fight." And I said, "Well, if it's not your fight, whose is it?" And it doesn't have to be a fight. It can be supportive, it can be positive. And that's what we're really here to do, not only, I think, for the Native artists that we have in our community, but I think there's an opportunity here to cross-promote, to support each other. And I think we, as the Native Voices Ensemble, is not only looking to cultivate the stories and preserve, not dominate, but preserve our heritage, but to also support and take hands with our brothers and sisters from other communities. And for me, it's many, it's like the UN up in here. But to take hands and say, hey, we as artists support each other. So it isn't the idea of we have to struggle and spend our last dime in order to make the art that's important to us. That there are people out there who want to hear these stories and are willing to come support, spend the money, have dinner, see a show, that they're out there. So, in a bridge to that, marketing, I would like you all, before you leave today, to pick up your phone, and this is my job in the ensemble too, to pick up your phone and find the Native Voices at the Autry Facebook page, or Twitter, or whatever your happy place may be. Like our page, find out what we're doing. Right now, we are really, this is the biggest undertaking that we've had as an ensemble and as a theater company, because how many people are in the cast?
19 people in the cast of the show we're doing, and it's an equity contract. It's 200 seats. It's not 99 seats.
And we're going to do this dang thing. And what would be great is in order to do that, we are looking for support from our peers, because it is a lofty undertaking. But in an accessible and moving way, we're looking to tell the stories of these children who are in Native boarding schools, who basically their identities were very purposefully, I guess, taken away.
Kill the Indian, save the man was the motto of the time. 50 years that went on.
And so we want to save the Indian and not kill anybody. So I guess just in closing, before we ask our questions, just please check out, you can find all the information, besides that, reaching out to us personally. Like, we love to talk, we're a fun group. We'll touch back, but please look, you'll find everything on our Facebook page, our Twitter at Native Voices, it's very clever, and soon to be an Instagram. So please check it out and keep in touch with us there, and I'm excited that all of you raise your hands, and we'll see you at Off the Rails.
So to keep us moving forward, I know everybody's question and breath is lingering. My question to my two emerging artists up here is, and you can take this however you like, how do you see your role or responsibility in making Native theater? Or why is Native theater important in Los Angeles? Why is Native theater important in Los Angeles? Or what is your responsibility or role in making Native theater visible?
I think one of the many reasons, but the first one that comes to me, why Native theater is important in Los Angeles, as it would be in any town around the country, is, we call the original caretakers of the land. We're the Tongva people, among others that were around here. And I think, so their stories are important because it's where we are. And there has been such a, wiping out and forgetting of that culture. And it's so simple to, it's almost too easy to wipe out people or a story. Just if nobody wrote, about the 43, if the news doesn't come, it stops where it goes and nobody writes about it. And then in 20 years, nobody knows about it. And it's relevant, and it will be relevant 20 years from now and beyond that. And so I think it's important to the stories that a lot of the stories haven't been told, is to reach back, in the history. Like I'm so fascinated with Bonded, like the nature of that play, and like 12 Years a Slave or other. I remember we were doing a play. We were doing like Amistad. We were doing a bit based on that story, and it was all from actual documents. And they were questioning us after the reading one time, and one of the guys who was one of these encyclopedia brains, somebody asked about something, and he's like, well, there's no slave rebellions in institutional history. They're not known that much. And then he's like, I'm from Virginia, and I happen to know in Virginia there were over 400 slave rebellions. And it's like, I never learned about that in school. And so things like that are there and in history, we got to go find them. But that fascinates the shit out of me. So that's one of the reasons I think Native theater is important.
Why Native theater is important?
What's your role?
Or what's my role? I would say that, to me, I won't even just say the preservation of a culture, but finding these stories and finding this history in a world where right now Native American culture is very appropriated. You go to, what's that festival? You go to Burning Man and you see a bunch of girls wearing, headdresses, and they don't understand what it means, and they don't understand why, and it's almost to that place where it's so misunderstood that people don't even realize that it's racist. I think that the role of Native theater is with Native voices, is to educate, especially in LA. There's a thriving artistic community who have mouths and the internet and the ability to speak these stories. So I guess I feel that, and in the wake of all that, and also in the wake of the Redskins controversy, that there is a necessity to tell these stories, so that just like we know with certain cultures that it's inappropriate to say certain things or do certain things, that I feel like Native American stories have not been told enough, and therefore I won't even call it an insensitivity or naivete, there's just a not knowing about this culture at all. And the way that we do that is by finding out these stories, I think, which is exactly what everyone else here is doing. So I guess my role in that is just to keep moving that along.
Robert and Liz, do you have a compelling question for Randy?
Oh, we have so many. Tell us the story. Something that Robert and I were talking about, because you and Jeannie have really, they've been doing this for 20 years or so. I mean, riding in a car from like city to city. And when they first started, I remember hearing the story of how Native Voices came about. They're both not only amazing artists, but they're educators. And that, I think, is an important element about this. But someone, I forget what university it was, asked Randy, we want to do a Native play. And there were 2 published Native American playwrights.
1993 in the United States, that you could purchase 2 different plays by Native Americans.
And that was it. And so I guess our question, Randy, to you is, in the 20 years, looking back on this 20 years of work and then moving forward, as a first responder, if there were no more responders, where would that leave us?
Well, I think we've almost got American theater and the professional theater understanding how racist the statement is. I couldn't find any Native Americans. That speaks to the laziness of the person looking. Type in Native American theater into Google. There were 13 million hits in less than a second. We've had this campaign to raise some money. Some people have talked to us on Facebook. One person remembered the play he worked on. That play's published now. There are hundreds of plays published by Native Americans now. We've almost turned that corner, and these young people have got to keep that train moving. Just keep it moving. It's already going. We're already here. We already belong. And we're trained. We're thoughtful. That's the thing I want to get out there. So often people who come from an oppressed place, the first thing they talk about is, I'm the only one. I made it out, And that's a human feeling, but I think our story has to change to, we are powerful. We belong to this coalition of theater companies in Los Angeles, and we are moving, and we are the voice of who is Los Angeles. We're not the outsiders, we're the core. And whatever was going on in the 50s and what we looked at with Leave It to Beaver, it's okay. We don't have to destroy that, but it's got nothing to do with our reality today. We're the voices. And that's why I'm happy to be here. That's why I said yes immediately, Teresa. You do that work. Thank you.
Let us thank you.
And as they transition out, I would invite us to take your breath in Think about all that you heard. Yeah, exhale as it feels right to you. And then I want you to think about what questions are still lingering. What are you inspired by? What is the next set of conversations you feel like you are ready to have? Yeah, so let's breathe that in. And exhale. Gorgeous. And I just want to honor how lovely and important and clear. I really appreciate what you said, Randy, about this is the core of who is telling stories in Los Angeles. And I feel like Randy and I were at a conference this summer. Some of us in the room, I think, were at TCG this summer, the Theater Communications Group conference in San Diego. And I was shocked, and I reached a new place of understanding for the people who don't know about this core of artists and communities. I feel sad for them. And I moved beyond my own frustration about their lack of knowing who we are, a scholar in particular. And my new response to those kinds of conversations is, it is on you to come meet us. And so I just honor all of the people in this room who are part of the us that is here, and to acknowledge and know that this is the beginning of the us. This is not all of the us here in Los Angeles. And so I just want to breathe that in. So I want to invite you, as you think about the larger us of cultural responders in Los Angeles, if there is a name of an elder or an emerging artist who you could have invited today to be on this stage, I would like us to invoke their names, to name them, because I feel like that's also part of the conversation as well. Yeah? So if there's somebody who's a first responder in your mind, whether they are physically still with us or if their spirit is still in Los Angeles, I would love us to say those names. So let's go ahead and just take a second, do your little inventory. Take that breath in. And exhale. And on the count of 3, we're just gonna name all these elders or emerging artists who are part of this conversation, yeah? 1, 2, 3. And so let us breathe in the history and the strength and the clarity of all of those voices. And exhale. Wonderful. So I know that this is the beginning. We are at our second break.
Introduce yourself to your partner and say hello. All right, so I will keep time. You have 2 minutes to talk about what do you think, what do you need to say? What's up with you right now? Ready? Go. Awesome. All right, I know, again, not enough time. And it is our hope that this is the first of many potential new conversations, new collaborations, new understandings about who we are as a community of cultural first responders. So you don't have to do it all right now. But we are together, so you can get down to some business, okay? So I'm wondering, 1 or 2 people, what is something you shared with your partner? So not to take on the confidentiality of the conversation you had with your partner, but what's something you said? What are you thinking about? Where are you at? And will you also, so I'm going to go to this pair, and will you make sure to just tell us your name? And yeah, one thing that you're thinking about.
Well, my name's Ashley Steed, and something that we talked about is the role of the audience. Because Nathan is not a theater practitioner, so he's asking me, like, what do you want from me? And I was saying, I don't like demanding things from my audience. I like sharing something with them, and if it inspires them in whatever way, be it like, oh, I'm not alone, or oh, there I am, or now I want to share that. Like that for me is a big thing in terms of my relationship with the audience.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so I'm not a playwright or in theater that way, or an actor or producer director, but I see a lot of theater in LA and the surrounding area. And I ask myself when I see shows and plays, you know, what is my role and how do I take this back into my community, however I may identify with various communities? And how do I take the art that I see out into my own world? And I teach at USC, and how can I think that makes a certain demand on me because I see so many shows and how I can integrate my experience in the world of theater as an audience member into my pedagogy as a teacher.
Thank you. And I'm not trying to be funny about it because I also want to honor, like, there's going to be lots that we all want to applaud, and I don't want us to get caught up in who's getting applauded and not. I don't know if that's an issue in this room, but in other rooms I've been in, that's a concern. Okay. So, and I thank Ashley and Nathan for giving us a sample of that conversation. I know that there were lots of other things said, so I want to acknowledge that. So if you could thank your partner.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
And if you, again, inside circle, so if your back is to where you were sitting as the audience in the previous section, you're gonna stand up and move, and Randy is the inside on this side. So if you are on the inside, I'm gonna ask you to stand up and move 2 people to your right. Your right. Awesome, so. Okay, next question. I'd like to give you 2 minutes to talk about who are the elders that you might have named at the end of the last, right before the break, or who are the emerging artists in your community or communities. Acknowledging I heard a lot of multiplicity and intersection from our duets and our trio. So holding all those things about who you are, who are the elders that you're thinking of in your community or communities, or who are the emerging artists who are doing this kind of work, or who you're just kind of realizing those are other people that we can reach out to. So I want to give you the opportunity to not just name those people, but have at least a minute conversation about why those people are coming up for you. Why those people? Yeah? Okay. So I will call out halfway again. You can decide how you go, and you have 2 minutes. Go.
Oh, okay.
Great. So, acknowledging that we had a chance to, in bulk, name our elders and emerging folks, I just want to offer 2 folks. Who did you name? One person that you named.
Lynn and I both overlapped our conversation. I named the emerging artist and elder Ed Water Street and DJ Curse from Deaf West, and Ann Stocking and Diane Jordan, who are marvelous actors. With Reagan Litton, who's a wheelchair, as an emerging artist. Reagan Litton is the first wheelchair actor to be hired full season at OSF. And
Oregon Shakespeare Festival.
Yeah, Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And Lynn named.
I named Victoria and Lewis, who is the founder of the Voices Workshop.
Last rotation. So the people who moved last time, I'm going to ask you to move one more time. I know. Thank you for being the movers in this round. And thank you to those of you who are staying and holding the foundation of where your dialogue That's what's up. Okay. This is still the family room right now. Okay. This is the family room right now. Okay. So I know that there's lots still to say. So this is your option. You always have the option to really respond to my prompts or talk about what you want. I appreciate that people have been following my prompts. My last prompt for today is a question that about productions and the first responder tales, community and crew, wonder. Today is our last symposium of this process. One of the questions on our survey is, what do you think is the next need or the next steps for the cultural first responder community in Los Angeles? And so you can frame that however you want. I guess my question is, after you've heard all this today, what do you feel like needs to be next? So however that question resonates with you, what do you feel like needs to be next to continue to inform these communities of their connect? I'm not even framing it. What do you feel like needs to be next? And I will give you that 2 minutes again and call out halfway. Go.
You know, I was drawn to how many
Great, so breaking with the formula, I'm going to invite 4 people really quickly to just share what's one thing that you need next, or how did you answer that question? Yeah? And to say that you do not have, if one partner shares it, it's not a requisite that the other partner has to share. I just want to open that up.
I won't allow it anyway.
Okay. Right. Okay, so I see 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, go.
One of the things that Victor and I talked about was, from here, how do I become involved in what everybody's doing? What is my part in it? Do I physically show up to what you're doing and support it in that way? Do I put the word out? What is my part in what everybody's doing? I want to be connected to all of you. And the other thing that Hector said, if it's okay for me, is it's like, you know, how do we stay afloat in the meantime? You know, our day job type thing. And one of the things that we both discussed was that, okay, we have a network here of people that have a network of people. So what about if we put into a pool what our other strengths are, and the other people say, well, you know what? I know somebody that needs that, and I know somebody, that kind of thing. So that was what was brought up in this little.
Great, thank you.
Mine was the same, so it was just about that. So
Everyone, everything aligns. All right, 3, no.
I was just thinking, because many years ago, Teresa and I were at a festival at LETC, and I was thinking it would be wonderful if there was a festival of first responder work that we could really share, and people, you know, from our communities would come and see the work. Wow. So I did that twice, and one was in LETC, and one was at the Actors Gang. And it was 4 or 5 companies, and it was a festival, and it was called Local Motion.
As an educator, I kind of pose the question, you know, how do we bring this power, this energy to our students? As students sitting in the audience, I mean, I had such a powerful reaction to, you know, just this whole event today, and for just my students to be able to just have the same type of catharsis. And you know, I think it's so powerful and so urgently needed. But you know, as an educator, it's always that big question of how do we change things? How do we get into these very colonized spaces of education?
And I appreciate you identifying as an educator. Just by raise of hands, how many people in the room are identified as an educator?
Teaching artist.
Teaching artist is an educator. There are 15 of us in this room who identify as educators at some level or another. So it is something we are thinking about. Since Robert passed, Ashley, we'll defer to Ashley. Okay, Ashley.
Because something that I feel like this is such the room to talk about this is I'm producing this conference for the greater performing arts community in Los Angeles. And it's an open space conference that takes place over 2.5 days, and it's to help facilitate these kinds of discussions. So there's no set panel, there's no set topics. Whoever shows up in the room are the right people. And you are the ones who come up with your own topics and sessions for the day. So one thing that I did when I was living in London at the conference there called Devoted and Disgruntled, which we're getting rid of disgruntled, yes, we don't want that. So what we're calling it, I really want to work with you guys more to help bring it, because what we're calling it is fuel. And for me, the conference served for me as this re-energizing, refueling to get me through the year of doing performing arts. And so when I was there and I was talking about visa issues because I was being kicked out of the UK and talking about being an immigrant and stuff like that coming from America, and people doing a dialogue like that, and I was talking about like if you
you want to talk about Native voices, if you want to talk about disability in the arts, if you want to talk about community organizing, if you want to talk about just a project you're working on, like I'm working on a piece about schizophrenia, who wants to devise with me? It's whatever you want to make it, and it's your responsibility to then type up the report to put on our website. So this is something that I'm working on, and what we need is help. We're looking for a venue that can hold 300 people. We're looking for people who are interested in joining us in organizing the community and reaching out to our civic leaders to create more spaces like this and more dialogues like this. So thank you so much.
Fuel and a time period-ish? Do you have a time period?
Okay, so we had a venue and then we lost the venue. So now the timetable is completely messed up. So we were thinking May, if possible, a Saturday, Sunday, half a day Monday. If May can't happen to get the funding and everything that we needed, or a venue, once we have a venue, that helps a lot, and the website, which we're working on right now.
So I do see a flyer. So let me say this. We do need you to, if you're not already on the About Productions mailing list, we do need you to join, because what we will be doing is we will share with you the link to the YouTube video that we were not able to play in the room today of Nobuko and June.
And also the sound.
And the sound for Ruben and Alex.
It's on YouTube, I've seen it.
Yeah. So I think what we'll do is we'll do a link, we'll do a list of links. Then we'll also, as the Fuel meeting happens, I will definitely say let's have you connect and share. I know people have cards. I heard there are several different shows that are starting to happen based on what we heard from our elder and emerging duets and trio, as well as About Production has a show happening as well. So before we go into the full calendar blast and all that, can you please say thank you to your partner? And here's what we would like to do with where you are. It is a little after 1. I'm gonna ask, can we stay in this space for another 5-ish minutes? Andrea and Teresa are passing around the surveys. Rose, can you partner with Lynn to be the survey partner? And to just say that your responses are going to go into our final report for our funders, and that we will be sharing with folks. Robert, you have a question?
Yeah, Alvin, I just wanted to acknowledge what an incredible facilitator you are.
Yes. I will
work with the best.
And I will acknowledge that I am from a legacy of cultural facilitators. Like, really, no joke. Like, people who taught me how to do what I do. So I just. So go ahead and fill these out, and you'll see that last question is exactly what you just talked about to your partner. So feel free to write down anything that you said to your partner. Awesome, and I know you may not be done because as we know, there's never enough time. But as you're finishing up, I just want to reintroduce Teresa, who's going to close us out with the last set of announcements. And can we just give a big round of applause to About Productions for spearheading this year of conversation for the kids.
Yes, thank you again. I'll keep it brief. And thank you all the elders, emerging artists that were here today. I want to thank a few people who aren't in the room that started this journey with us on a committee, which is, well, he continued to be on the committee. He's not here. Mark Valdez from Network of Ensemble Theaters. Danielle Brazel, who when she started with us, she was with Arts for LA, and now she is the head of the Department of Cultural Affairs. Terrence McFarland from LA Stage Alliance was in our original committee and helped ground the conversation, the ideas for the conversation. And another current member, 2 current members that aren't here today. One is out of town, Leilani Chan and Dolores Chavez. I want to thank her in particular because Inner City Arts was our host for the first 3 events, and were wonderful hosts, and Dolores served on our committee the entire time as well. So wanted to get that thank you out there. And I want to do a little marketing plug. We do have a show that's coming up at the Pasadena Playhouse, and I do want to respond to this beautiful woman's comment, beautiful in every way, about do we go see each other's shows, what do we do? And yes, I think it is important, like you were asking, Liz, how many people are coming to see our show? If we all of us all went to each other's shows and supported that effort,
and got the word out, our communities would grow and our connections would grow. And this is partially what this First Responders has been about, is making those connections and looking each other in the eye and saying, I support you, I believe in the work that you're doing, and I honor the work that you're doing. So with that, a plug for Properties of Silence. I'm going to pass out these cards. The information's on there. There's a discount code on the back. It's a contemporary rendering of the Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz story, but done in a very contemporary way. Sor Juana Inés, in our presence here, Rose Portillo playing Sor Juana, is also one of the co-writers with myself and Alan Poulner, and it's set in contemporary Phoenix, Arizona, although she is a 17th century icon from Mexico.
We could say it's a dream play.
And it is a dream play. It's a complete dream, and it's totally influenced by El Primero Sueño, first dream, the first dream, which is her penultimate surviving work. So I hope you all come. It's at the small theater at the Carrie Hamilton, and we have all these wonderful. We're also doing a post-silence salon, so after each show there will be a short break, because it's a one-act and it's a series of poets and literary folks and panels. So that will be the second half of, paired with the one act. So hopefully you guys will join us. And I know other folks have information they want to pass out as well. Lynn, if you want to.
Well, Situación Desaparecido, we are performing this weekend. Next weekend will be Spanish. The last weekend of performances we'll have it with subtitles. We did it so fast we have had not time to translate it, but we'll have it with subtitles. So the Priacado Theater is less than a mile away from here, by Alvarado and 3rd. We have parking lots. And so, you're welcome. And one of the things I'm gonna use the time, we were talking about to do this more often. I mean, I love them, especially when you do 3-4 hours. It does take away my whole day, and I get to know other people, see other people, hear about other people's work. Thank you.
Can we just do one more breath together of all the things that you're carrying away with today, all the questions that still linger, the action that you want to take, the discoveries you hope to find, and to honor the connection and the discoveries you made in the room from the people in this room and all of our collective work. Yeah. So let's go ahead and take that breath in and exhale. And one more big breath in. Store away all of that for a time when you will need it later, and exhale. As you exit today, I'm going to ask you to make sure to be safe. Don't hurt yourself or anyone else. Your surveys, we're going to invite you to give to Andrea. She'll take your surveys and your pens. And the last round of thanks, if we could say thank you to Andrea and Marina and Paul, who are doing and Shakespeare Center, Los Angeles. Thank you very much to you. Great.
Please sign the mailing list, because if you're not on Facebook or we don't have your email, it'll be hard to track you down. It'll be easier if we just had your email. Andrea will make sure that you sign the list.
And feel free to take any of the food that is still in the lobby. I know you all want to eat food later. Thank you all. Have a beautiful rest.